Good evening. Chair calls to order legislative session day 20-017. I would ask you to join us in standing for the pledge, followed by opening prayer this evening by Councilman Johnson. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, nation, God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
All hearts bowed. Lord, we humbly come before you tonight, thanking you for another day to serve our constituents. Now, as we go forward, please allow us to serve with honor and integrity. In your name, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Agenda item number 4, special presentations this evening. We will start with our Harford County Health Officer, Dr. Moy. Good evening, sir.
Hello. So thank you, Council President Vincenti and members of the County Council. I'm here to give an update on the COVID-19 situation. So first, an update on the numbers as of this morning. Worldwide, there are 4.8 million cases and 319,000 deaths. In the United States, 1.5 million cases with 90,000 deaths. In Maryland, over 41,000 cases and 1,963 confirmed deaths. And in Harford County, 709 cases with 32 confirmed deaths. So a closer look at the Harford County specific age data shows that those between the ages of 18 and 64 make up 67% of the COVID cases, but account for only 8% of the deaths. And those age 65 or older make up 31% of the cases, but account for 92% of the deaths. And for those under age 18 in Harford County, so far they account for only 1% of cases and no deaths. Taking a closer look at Harford County's specific nursing home data shows that nursing home COVID cases make up only 16% of the county's COVID cases, but the nursing home COVID deaths make up 56% of the county's COVID deaths. So these data confirm that the understanding that although everyone is at risk for getting COVID-19, it's those who are at higher risk, older people and those with underlying medical conditions that are more likely to die from the virus. Having said that, there's been some recent COVID-19 news about a rare inflammatory disease with heart complications among children that may be connected to the virus. So in New York City, over 100 children have become severely ill with this syndrome, with at least 3 deaths. And this condition is called pediatric multisystem inflammatory syndrome, and it's been found in children in at least 14 states. So instead of COVID-19 being primarily a viral respiratory disease that affects the lungs, many folks today think that the disease progresses into an exaggerated inflammatory disease that affects many other organ systems, including the heart, brain, and kidneys. In other words, some are now believing that COVID-19 starts as a respiratory virus and kills as a cardiovascular virus, and that this may also affect children. Last week at our Board of Health meeting, we compared the COVID numbers among Maryland's 24 jurisdictions and saw that Harford County has numbers better than most comparably sized jurisdictions. So today, we updated those numbers because we need to track this metric as a key indicator for how we're doing. As of today, May 19th, Harford County continues to have the lowest number of COVID cases per 100,000 population and the lowest number of COVID deaths per 100 population for the 11 largest Maryland jurisdictions that have at least 700 COVID cases. So to review, the number of COVID cases per capita, that's only a very broad indicator of how we're doing because it's dependent on how much testing is actually taking place in the county. But it's the number of COVID deaths per capita that is the more important indicator because it tells you how many people died of COVID. regardless of whether they were tested for COVID or not before their death. And right now, Harford County has a COVID death rate of 13 per 100,000 population. And if you compare that with the county and the state with the highest COVID death rate, that county has a COVID death rate of 47 per 100,000 population. Last week, Councilman Woods asked about the number of negative COVID tests that has been done to date. For the state, as of today, 208,658 COVID tests have been done, with 41,546 testing positive and 167,112 testing negative. And that gives the state a positivity rate of about 20%. We also got a special data run for Harford County and found out that there were 6,790 COVID tests have been done so far, of which 709 tested positive and 6,081 tested negative. And that gives Harford County a positivity rate of 10%. So the question is, what's the significance of a community's positivity rate? Most experts, including those at Johns Hopkins and the World Health Organization, recommend that the COVID positivity rate for a community be less than 12%. And so ours is 10%, so that's good. If a community's positivity rate is too high, that might indicate that the community is only testing the sickest patients who seek medical attention and does not have enough testing capacity to accurately measure how prevalent the virus is throughout the community. On the other hand, a low positivity rate in testing data, like that in Harford County, can be seen as a sign that the community is testing enough of its population to make informed decisions about reopening. So in summary, for both counts, the number of COVID deaths per capita and the COVID positivity rate of testing, Harford County's metrics show that at this moment, we're in good shape for a reopening. But again, we need to stay careful because all you need is a few big outbreaks and that can change those numbers overnight. My final remarks have to do with the governor's May 13th executive order that lifted the stay-at-home order on May 15th, allowing us into stage one of the state's reopening plan. So this executive order covers a number of topics, including opening outdoor public spaces to the general public, such as parks, sports fields and courts, and beaches and other venues. It also opens some retail establishments, some personal services and religious facilities at 50% capacity, and opening manufacturers back up. But I believe there's room for interpretation for a number of these issues. And we've asked for and are awaiting more guidance from the state on this. I think in our county, we're working very well with the sheriff's office, with County Council President Vincente, with County Executive Glassman's office, and others in trying to find an educational and facilitative approach that fits within the legal parameters of the executive order. So the focus of our local health department, until we get better and more clear guidance from the state, our focus will be on the bigger public health picture, the stability and hopefully the improvement of our key metrics that we'll be following, the prevention of large outbreaks, and the overall health of our residents, and all of this within a common sense framework that we hope makes sense to folks in the county. And that would conclude my remarks for the COVID-19 update today.
Thank you, Dr. Moy. Council, any questions of Dr. Moy? Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. Dr. Moy, I just have one quick question. And you kind of touched on it, but what has changed with this virus that would conclude us reopening the state? Has the virus changed? Have the cases so low that we now have the capacity to reopen and not have any clusters break out?
So I think what's happened is the virus, has basically spread throughout the world, and it's hit certain areas. It hit the west coast of the United States first, came over to New York. Now it's down here in the Pennsylvania, Maryland area. And so anytime it hits a certain region, they look at certain metrics. The one big metric that the governor looks at is the hospitalization rate. He wants to be sure that the hospitalization rate is trending downward over a 14-day period. And in Maryland, that has happened. He's also looking at the new death rates of COVID patients, and that's at least plateaued. And he's looking at the intensive care unit bed usage, and that has also plateaued. So it's not that the virus itself has changed, it's that hopefully the virus has sort of run its course in our region, and we have to follow these metrics. As long as the metrics look okay, we can slowly reopen. And in Harford County, we're carefully looking at those metrics and the other metrics that I mentioned. And as long as they're stable, we think we can reopen. But as I said, all it takes is a few big outbreaks. It could change all the numbers. And if that were to happen, then you would hear from me, because that's something we cannot take a chance on.
And Baltimore County, I went on Maryland.gov today, and I see Baltimore County has almost 5,000 cases in Baltimore County. Now, could Baltimore County's cases spill back over to Harford County? Is that a possibility?
Absolutely. So we're in a region, the central region, Baltimore County, Baltimore City, we're Carroll County. I mean, they have some pretty high numbers too. So we're in a region that obviously has a much higher number of cases per capita and number of COVID deaths per capita. So no, we're not out of the woods yet. We're right on that border. Could it spill over? It certainly could spill over. That's the thing we got to watch for. But right at this moment, of the 11 largest counties, we have the best rates right at this moment. So that's why we feel like we can see how that goes. But we're watching this every week, every day.
Okay, thank you very much, Doc.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Schroeds.
Thank you, Council President. It kind of ties into what Councilman Johnson was just saying, but it also ties into how my question has to do with how you started kind of tonight. And that was, I guess I'm trying to get from you, Dr. Moy, what is your concern with the younger population? You said that 67%, I believe, was affected, but of course the rate of recovering was much better. But because of that high rate, it's what you said and kind of highlighted, that there's other effects that may come down the road, and it seems like we're trending behind a lot of these other areas like New York. And you said how many of those younger people are now experiencing these other after effects, I guess, like stroking out and things like that. Of course, that's very uncommon for young people. I just want to see, what your thoughts are here locally and how that's going with your peers and other individuals that you speak to in the state of Maryland, and what kind of concern that is for us locally.
So I think the concern is, for several months, there was a consensus that although everybody could get the COVID-19 virus, the mortality rates were highest in those who were over age 60 or age 65, and those with underlying medical conditions. Everybody can get it, but the ones who are dying were the at-risk folks. But now the situation in New York City, it's not a lot of cases, it's 100 cases, but that it's affecting children. That's what's gotten everybody's attention. So it's something to keep an eye on. It does not account for a lot of numbers, but a few months ago, nobody thought it really had a serious effect on kids. But now we know that this is a disease that is only really 4 months old, and people still don't know a lot about it. And so they're learning something new all the time. I think of all the things, that's the thing of the most concern. People just don't have a good handle on this yet. So that's why they have to be vigilant all the time, keeping track of it. But at this very moment, in this state, in our county, it's not creating a large mortality rate amongst children. And so at this moment, it's just something to keep an eye on. Now, certainly, if we started to have a lot of those pediatric multi-system inflammatory syndrome cases in Maryland, that would make national news, and we would definitely take other actions. But at this moment, it has not yet happened in this state that I'm aware of.
Right. Now, how long does it take if a young person's affected by COVID? How long does that take to turn into that other something else where it affects their brain, their heart, et cetera? What's that kind of timeline, or is it not known yet?
So there's only been like 100 cases, and I think it's not completely known yet. From what I've read, COVID acts quickly in all ages. So that's what gets people's attention. If it hits you and you take a turn for the worse, it acts quickly.
I got one more thing I just thought of. Of course, Harford County and in our region, just trying to understand how you track some of these numbers and hospitalization and death rates, because not everyone may go to Upper Chesapeake. They go to other hospitals. A lot of folks in the Norrisville, Powellsville area, they kind of gravitate more towards the York area, and then some individuals and residents kind of in that north and west area, they may gravitate towards, a hospital in Towson or Baltimore. How do we track those cases and tie them into Harford County? Because I know that there are other hospitals a half an hour or even less from us, St. Joe's and GBMC, Franklin Square, there's these other ones. How do we tie all that into the database that you use, and then York Hospital in Pennsylvania? Trying to understand that.
Sure. So we get all of our data from the Maryland Department of Health. They're the repository of all data sets. And the thing is, it's not one data set. So they get data from vital records, from death certificates. They get data from laboratories. They get data from a variety of places. And then what they do is they take all of these data and they merge it into their data set. So this is not our data set. This is their data set. What they then will periodically do is share with each county the data for the residents of that county. This is not by hospital. This is all residents.
Right. Okay.
It's all residents, and they're collecting, and they can collect it because they get it from all these different sources, including they can get it from neighboring states. So the state health department, they have all the primary data. Then for each county, they give us our share of the data. And then we can kind of analyze just Harford County residents. And once again, it's not just the hospital here. It's Harford County residents. And that's the data that we track, is Harford County residents.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Council members, anyone else? All right, seeing none. Dr. Moy, I want to thank you for taking the time this evening to come report to us. Also, the time this afternoon for the meeting that we had. I truly believe that one of the reasons why we are able to work together so well is obviously your leadership. So I want to thank you again for that. And we'll be talking again tomorrow, I'm sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Council, at this time, I'd like to invite our Citizen Budget Advisor Chair, Mr. Andrew Ondish, and he will give us a report on the fiscal year 21 Citizen Budget Advisory Report. Mr. Lundish.
Good evening, Council President Vincenti and members of the Board of the County Council. We are proud to have been appointed to the Citizens Budget Advisory Board for fiscal year 21. We feel it's important for the citizens of Harford County to know we are a board consisting of many different backgrounds, but all with knowledge of the county budgeting process. Our members are experienced in agricultural, emergency services, local governments, business, education, and finance. The fiscal year 21 budget added a new challenge unlike anything we have seen before. This disruption of our basic way of life due to COVID-19 is a concern we will have for the foreseeable future. We have spent the last month working closely with the council while adhering to social distancing requirements as we reviewed the various departments in the budget. The board also participated in all virtual budget hearings, and I want to take a minute to thank them all personally for their tireless work that they put into this process. I will now outline the comments and remarks discussed during our Citizens Budget Advisory Deliberation meeting held for Friday, May 8th via WebEx. Members also had the opportunity to send comments by email if they could not attend the session. The adoption of the real estate and income tax rates for fiscal year 21 was discussed by the board during our meeting. We understand the county is concerned about the effects of COVID-19. The uncertainty of the available funds is a reason we would like to see these rates adopted as proposed. If we do not adopt these rates and lower the rates, then we guarantee a reduction in county funding that could be detrimental to the county as a whole. Any changes to these rates should have a clear and concise spending cuts associated, but we feel this budget does not support this at that time. The Board of Education budget was fully funded for fiscal year 21. We cannot express our pleasure enough with the collaboration amongst the Board of Education and the county administration to ensure the needs of our students are met here in Harford County. We asked for more collaboration last year as a part of our report, and we appreciate the efforts made on behalf of our county schools. We are concerned with the lack of technology available for distance education initiatives and hope the experience with COVID-19 allows for the Board of Education to increase the expansion of technology so our students can continue the learning process during these difficult times. We also see potential issues with Kerwin funding not being available in future fiscal years and ask for plans to be developed now in case the additional state funding is not there in fiscal year 22, as currently vetoed by our governor. We do not want to wait until it is too late and need to identify alternative funding sources in potentially recessed economy and would rather see those strategies prepared in advance. The board would also like to commend the funding of our county volunteer fire companies, sheriff, and other emergency services. We are in very trying times, and these are essential services needed to help protect county residents. We support the low SAP legislation to ensure our volunteer members get the credit for the service they are providing. We appreciate the sheriff collaborating on resources with the courthouse to ensure the safety of our prosecutors. During these budget sessions, we heard specific issues concerning safety of our state's attorneys and observed firsthand solutions being discussed to address these concerns. The board does see some concerns in our county agricultural going into fiscal year 21. There is a backlog of ability for farmers to offload livestock because of current processing plant shutdowns. Harford County has rural roots, and we would like to see our partners work with our agricultural businesses to help ease the backup we are currently facing. We commend all our local farms and what they're doing to continue to provide for the residents of our county. We do ask that we support local whenever we can and challenge our residents to do the same. The capital budget for fiscal year 21 does leave open a few concerns from the board. We are proud of the projects in the current fiscal year, but we saw some projects continue to be pushed out to future years. Other projects came off completely, which does concern our board that some of these might be left out indefinitely. We would like to see the future consideration to the Darlington Library, the consolidation of the space needs for the state's attorney, and are also asking to prioritize road projects now that could be completed sooner with reduced highway traffic. The fiscal year 21 budget includes specific increases over the prior year budget. While we do appreciate the pay raises proposed for many of our county employees, we implore the need to closely monitor revenue in the coming year and consider adjustments in staffing accordingly. We are encouraged by recent events that businesses will be able to open in some capacity and ask that our civic leaders continue to advocate for residents both from a health and economic standpoint. The board understands how delicate this balance is and commends all of our county leaders and employees for the long hours and overtime that COVID-19 has caused. Our board will continue to make ourselves available throughout all of fiscal year 21 as we foresee this budget needing many potential amendments as the years go on to help combat any negative effects of the economy. It was encouraging to hear the success that the Information and Communication Technology Department had in rapidly deploying resources to enable county workers to telework and to continue to provide valuable services to our citizens. These initiatives should be considered and possibly expanded if cost containment becomes necessary as the economic conditions shift. As always, we want to thank County Executive Barry Glassman and his entire administration for their work on the fiscal year 21 budget. We'd also like to thank Council President Vincenti and the entire council as you made it possible for the citizens to participate in these. The Citizens Budget Advisory Board would also like to thank Mila Dixon and Crystal Brooks for helping to make these budget hearings run efficiently. All of your efforts during these difficult times are very much appreciated by the Citizens Budget Advisory Board and our Harford County residents. Thank you all, and be happy to answer any questions that you might have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Ondish. Appreciate your thorough report, Councilman. At this time, that's your time for questions. Mr. Schroeds.
Yes, thank you, Council President. I just want to thank you, Andrew, as well as the rest of the team, especially the guy that's been with me for many, many years, maybe a decade, Bob Tibbs. And, just want to thank all the work that you did, to come in and to prepare this report and to advise each of us. We just really appreciate it. And just want to let you know that so you can share with the other members. Thanks.
Thank you. And I'd also like to recognize the rest of the board. I did forget to do that when we were presenting there. So thank you to Dr. Hill, Mr. Williams, Mr. Rebert, Mr. Tibbs, Mr. Scotton, and Mrs. Hergenhahn.
Council, anyone else? Thanks again, Mr. Ondish, and I'm still impressed with Mr. Tibbs, I have to tell you, able to tune in virtually.
Everybody did an amazing job this year. We can't thank you guys enough for making this possible for us and for all the citizens of Harford County. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, sir. Good evening.
You as well.
So our next presentation is from Xerxes Manufacturing Corporation. And Council, over the last couple of years, we've had several questions about from our businesses in reference to replacing underground tanks. And it could be a water tank, a septic tank, a fuel tank. And I just thought it would be appropriate for us to reach out and connect with a company that can bring us up to speed on how these new tanks are produced and how they use certain technologies so that they are environmentally friendly. And with that, I would like to recognize and welcome Mr. Waitley and also Marie Traber and Rachel Allen. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Council President Vincente and other council members. As I understand it, somebody on your end is going to flip the slides for me.
Yes.
So if we can go to the next slide. So this, I'm speaking for Xerxes. It's kind of complex who we are, but we're basically owned by the company in the lower right-hand corner called Shawcor. Xerxes is the largest producer of underground storage tanks in North America. All the tanks we made are made out of fiberglass. This is a picture of a job site somewhere in Texas. Next slide, please. So a bit of history. Xerxes was established way back in 1979. The corporate offices in the U.S. are in Minneapolis. It's a privately held company for until 2007 when it was acquired by a company called ZCL Composites, which was actually at the time a licensee of Xerxes. ZCL was established in 1987. They're headquartered in Edmonton, Alberta, and they were publicly traded on the Toronto Stock Exchange. But on April 1 of last year, ZCL and Xerxes were acquired by Shawcor. So ZCL is no longer on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Next slide, please. So our company has three different parts of our business. We sell tanks for petroleum products, so gasoline, diesel, different alcohol blends. We sell tanks for water products, so septic tanks, stormwater, runoff tanks, fire protection, water tanks, potable water tanks. And then we do sell tanks for the oil field business, primarily in Texas and Western Canada. And as you all know from reading the paper, the oil business is not a good business. So that part of our business is not too robust, but the petroleum side of it is very robust. Next slide, please. So this is just a shot of a typical tank hole. As they prepare for the tanks, you'll notice on the bottom of the hole there's gravel, typically crushed stone or pea gravel. Those long beams you see are called concrete deadmen, so those are used to help hold the tank in the ground. This particular hole has shoring, which makes the edges straight, and that shoring is covered by a filter fabric that prevents the backfill from migrating into the native soil. So this is just one example. There are other ways to install it, but this is one of the more common ones. Next slide, please. So here are three of our tanks in that hole that you just saw. These tanks are anchored to those concrete deadmen that I pointed out in the last shot, and you can see across the tank running kind of down the length of it what are called hold down straps. So those straps, which are made of fiberglass, they attach to those concrete deadmen, and between the concrete deadmen, the straps, and the backfill that will fill this hole, that's how the tank stays in the ground during operation. Next slide, please. This is a shot of fiberglass pipe that is probably 50% of the market in pipe. This is not something we make, but this is a shot of fiberglass pipe. 50% of the retail fueling facilities in the United States use rigid fiberglass pipe. The other 50, and those are rough numbers, use flexible pipe. The white boxes you see are under dispenser containment sumps. So above those boxes, when this station is finished, is what the layperson would call the pump, but it's a dispenser. It's the piece of equipment you stick your credit card in and pull the nozzle and stick the nozzle in your car. That sits above these white containers, which could contain leaks from the dispensers, which do happen from time to time. Next slide, please. So this is a map of where our plants are. You can see we have one right up the road in Hagerstown, Maryland. That happens to be our largest plant. And then we have 5 more in North America, Texas, Anaheim, the West Coast, Tipton, Iowa, in the middle part of the country, one in Eastern Canada and one in Western Canada. Next slide, please. So just to give you some idea of who we sell our product to, between Canada and the US, we sell to 10 major oil companies, 32 large and small C-store chains, grocery and hypermarket chains, truck stop chains, approximately 250 what are called PEI distributors. Those are petroleum equipment distributors. These are typically small, local, or at least regional businesses that distribute a whole range of petroleum equipment. So pipe and nozzles and dispensers and all the things you need to build a C-store or fueling facility. Then in addition, we do sell industrial commercial accounts. So an example of that just could be, say, the school bus garage in Harford County. I don't know exactly how you fuel your school buses, but if you were to use underground tanks, you would be an example of a commercial account that we might sell tanks to. Next slide. So to give you an idea of the range of products, we make double wall and triple wall tanks. Kind of self-explanatory. A double wall has two walls and triple wall has 3. Capacity is 600 to 50,000 gallons. Size and diameter is 4, 6, 8, and 10 foot. We make them in 1, 2, and 3 compartment models. What that means is that a typical tank would say be one 20,000 gallon tank. But very often you'll find at a C-store, they'll have one 20,000, then they'll have another tank that's split into 2 compartments, 12,000 and 8,000. That's what a compartment tank is. And then we offer 2 different ways to monitor the interstitial space of the double wall tank. So those drawings show one method, which is a hydrostatic method. There is a dry method. Both are approved in the state of Maryland. Our customers kind of split 50-50 on that. Some 50% like it with hydrostatic, 50% like it dry. Point is they're both approved and you can use either. It's a customer preference. Next slide, please. Now this is, I think, an important slide because it speaks to how the tanks are built and why we believe they are strong vessels for storage of hazardous liquids, which is what gasoline is. One of the first points we like to make is the geometry of the tank. If you look at the picture on the lower right, that's a cutout of one of our tanks showing the ribs that run out along the outside of the tank. You'll notice the rib is an integral part of the actual tank itself. It's bonded to the tank. It's not added on. There are manufacturers that would add that rib on, and it doesn't attach to the base tank, so we don't believe that construction, add the rib on, is as strong. In the picture on the upper right, you'll see that's a shot of the interstitial space. So you see 2 walls and you see material in between. That material is called parabeam. It forms the interstitial space. That's the space between the 2 walls. That's the space you would monitor for a potential leak. In our case, this parabeam bonds the 2 walls together. Other products do not have the 2 walls bonded together. And we think that adds to the strength of the tank. I want to point out that all the materials we use are UL listed. That's important because what that means is you can't wake up on Monday morning, decide to buy a cheaper resin because it's cheaper. Every material used in this tank has to pass certain UL tests. Some of those take quite some time. UL periodically and randomly inspects all of our plants to make sure we're adhering to the standard and using the materials that we've qualified. The other thing we offer is a 360-degree containment, meaning the tank is double wall all the way around. There are tanks that are only 300-degree containment. And what that means is if you have a leak at the top of the tank with a 300-degree containment, you basically have a single wall tank. You don't have any double wall protecting it. So 360 degrees is a true double wall tank. Next slide, please. This might be a little hard for you to read, but I know you have paper copies. I believe you do anyhow. This is cut from our warranty, and the reason I wanted to show you this is it shows in section 2A, B, C, and D all of the different fuels that are warranted for storage in our fiberglass tanks. So you can see all the different ethanol fuels, biodiesel, which has become quite common now, particularly with truck stops, and then kind of a variety of what I'll call boutique fuels in that section 2C. You don't actually see a lot of those today, but they existed at one point in time. And that's just to give you a comfort level that what C-stores in your county would be storing are all covered, in terms of the fuel, are covered by this warranty. Next slide, please. I'll mention the warranty. It's a 30-year warranty for internal and external corrosion, so they're fiberglass, they don't rust. It's also 30 years for structural failure. So if the tank cracks open and product gets in the ground, that's a structural failure. That's covered. That's a picture on the right of the UL label. All all tanks, regardless of manufacturer, if they're UL listed, would have that label. I mentioned on the left-hand side ULC, so if we were building a tank in Canada, it would have ULC, but they're equivalent. Next slide, please. So to kind of sum it up, for our product, Xerxes, you don't have to worry about internal corrosion. There's a superior warranty coverage. There's no maintenance mandates. The reason I point that out is there are certain material types, the tanks, there are certain tanks built with materials that do require maintenance mandates. So for example, in a steel tank, you're required to keep water out of the bottom of the tank. You may know or not, but all tanks have water in them from condensation and humidity. Obviously, in a metal tank, water can cause corrosion. So in those tanks, you're required to maintain them by keeping the water out. I talked about our superior structural design, our extensive proven track record, over 30 years of producing this product. We're a financially strong, publicly held company. I mentioned we're the largest producer in North America. I would add we're the largest producer in the world of fiberglass tanks, but in North America of all tanks. And of course, we have to be competitively priced because we have competitors. So that's kind of the summary on Xerxes. I think our plan was to move into ACOM's part and then have questions at the end. That's all right with everybody?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. All right, so I was just going to go over some of the Maryland regulations regarding underground storage tanks. So all the underground storage tanks need to meet the COMAR Regulation 2610, Subtitle 10 for the Oil Pollution and Tank Management Program. And the regulations that MDE, Maryland Department of Environment, have are all made to protect the environment and quickly report and detect any problems with the tank systems. So all tank systems, well, we just talked about that, need to be double walled, as well as the piping for the product lines, the vapor lines and the vent lines are also double walled. They have a containment system on both the tank tops and under the product dispensers. They're also need to be installed by an MDE certified UST technician. MDE has their own certification program that the technicians go through. And all the tanks have to have interstitial monitoring, which is the sensors between the tank walls. And also, the tanks are inspected by MDE inspector and must pass a tightness test prior to being put in use. Next slide. All the tanks have to have a release detection program. It's under COMAR 261005. And the release detection has to monitor the interstitial space between the tank and the piping. There's also release detection methods that can be used, including statistical inventory reconciliation, automatic tank gauging, or other methods by MDE. Next slide. So MTBE was an additive to gasoline, and that was phased out by the industry in 2006. And in connection with the phase out, Maryland designated certain counties in the state of Maryland as high-risk groundwater use areas. And those included Baltimore, Harford County, Cecil County, Carroll County, and Frederick counties. They adapted stricter regulations in those counties to further protect the groundwater in the area and the environment. As you know, these were the counties that were utilizing potable wells for drinking water and also had wellhead protection areas. Next slide. So within the groundwater, the high-risk groundwater use areas, the new UST installations have to have additional fail-safes to them as opposed to the rest of the state of Maryland. So there's they have testing. They have to test for vapor leaks prior to startup of a new installation, and of course use the interstitial monitoring. Also, they have you have to implement one of the three of these. They either put in groundwater monitoring wells outside of the tank pit to monitor the groundwater, or install a pressure control device on the tank, or install a soil vapor extraction system, which is a remediation system that would be installed so that if there was any kind of release from the tank, you could quickly turn that on and begin cleanup immediately. Also, in the high-risk groundwater use area for all the systems that are over 2,000 gallons, which would be a retail gasoline station, you need to install 4 tank field monitoring wells. Those would be wells that are in the tank field themselves. Other counties only have to install 2 tank field monitoring wells. Next slide. There's additional testing that has to be done within these counties. Within 30 days of a new tank installation, if the site is on a potable well, that would need to be sampled within 30 days and be tested at a laboratory for volatile organic components, which would encompass petroleum components also. Also, sample any monitoring wells that would be on your property and have that tested also at a laboratory. And the catch basins and the tank sumps for the dispensers and the tanks need to be tested. All of those, the testing of the supply wells, the testing of the monitoring wells, and the spill catch basins, and then that's done after 30 days of install, and then yearly until the lifespan of the underground storage tank system. Next slide. So the state of Maryland has some very stringent reporting requirements when it comes to potential or even suspect releases. So any suspect release from an underground storage tank needs to be reported to MDE within 2 hours. And discovery of a release could entail finding free product or vapors in soils if you're doing any kind of excavation, maybe vapors in basements or sewers and utility lines, or finding any kind of sheen on the surface water. That would all need to be reported to MDE within 2 hours. Also, any unusual operating conditions of your UST system, should it be pumping sporadically or giving you odd codes from some of your sensors, that would be considered an unusual operating condition. And then, of course, any detections that you would find, with your release detection methods that you were using. Also, any surface spills need to be reported to MD within 2 hours. So, anytime that you're pumping gas and some people forget they're pumping gas and they get in their car and they drive away and pull the nozzle out and a little bit spills on the ground, any amount needs to be reported to MDE. So, so the Maryland regulations have really been developed to, like I said before, to detect and really report releases quickly. And Maryland has extremely stringent requirements when it comes to reporting. The 2-hour reporting window that Maryland has is much more stringent than in other states. Virginia is 24 hours, and most of the surrounding states are 24 hours. So since 2006, Maryland has really stepped up their game, and they've really been more of a watchdog on retail gasoline stations. And they also have quite a quite of a on-hands approach to remediation should a release occur. MDE reviews like all work plans. Pretty much you can't do anything without MDE's permission on the site. And they really guide the remediation so that it's protecting the citizens of Maryland. And, they're not bashful either about using the consent order should you not be going fast enough for their liking. So that's basically what I want to talk about, Maryland Department of Environment.
Thank you very much, Council. First, let me thank you for the presentation. And Council, at this time, anyone have any questions? Mr. Schroes.
Thank you, Council President. I was just curious, what is the containment basin? Like, how does that work? I realize that you have double and triple wall tanks, but if something, God forbid, did happen, how does that other containment basin work and all of that? I saw the concrete, I saw how you put it in there, but I was unsure of, what kind of membrane is in there to contain it and where that goes. How do you get it out? And I don't know if you could explain that to me. I'm not sure who to address it to.
Mr. Whaley.
Well, so the annular space, the space between the two walls in a double wall tank, would be monitored with a sensor. Sensor's placed in a fitting at the top of the tank, and it goes down and rests on the bottom of the tank. So if you were to get a breach of the inner wall, the fuel would go into that annular space, and the sensor would detect it, and an alarm would go off in the C-store, and that would alert the operator to shut the tank down. And then they would do what's required by MDE to come out and address that suspected leak. Back when double wall tanks were originally designed, so this is 30 some years ago, federal EPA thought the annular space should be able to hold X amount of product in it. So the annular space was about 2 inches wide, and you saw in the slide I showed it's very small now. They decided that EPA did that wasn't a necessary requirement. What they really were after was quick detection. So the smaller the annular space, the quicker a leak's detected, and then the system shut down. And in the case of Maryland, MDE can address it. That makes sense. The hole itself, as a side note, that fabric you saw on the side of the hole, that's really to keep the pea gravel or crushed stone from going into the native soil. There are parts of the country where they require a hole liner that isn't really that efficient in terms of keeping the whirl leak, keeping it in the hole. That's one reason why Marie mentioned those wells that are done in the tank pit, kind of help detect and extract anything that happens quickly.
Right. So basically the walls within the tank is the system, and that other liner is like you said, just to separate the soils.
Right.
It's not like it sits in like a liner that, let's say, a landfill may have underneath of it. There's nothing really there. It's just how it sits in. It's kind of the tank is the self-containment itself. Yes. That's why you have 2 or 3 walls.
I think the word you use, system, is a good word, because you have an underground storage system here, and the system's compiled of the tank, the anchoring system, so the deadman and the straps, the backfill is critical, and the monitoring. The electronic equipment, that's all part of the system, and installed properly and paid attention to, the system will detect that leak and let you act on it before it becomes catastrophic. And the new leak detection systems. I don't sell them, but they've become a lot more sensitive. They're also very difficult to ignore them when you have a problem. If you're the operator.
I guess another question is, what do you see happening not only in our region, but in other places where they've had trouble with MDE? I said that wrong.
MTBE.
MTBE. Now that, that's not in the fuel anymore. And now technology and engineering and everything that you just spoke about, I realize there are other manufacturers as well, but where is it going? Are some of these jurisdictions gradually lifting some of the stringent policies they have? Let's say if you're in a rural area where you only have private wells, et cetera, are we there yet or not quite there yet? Is this, I'm just, curious, what do you see happening? We're not the only area that faced what we did back in the early 2000s in Boston, and of course, Jacksonville nearby in Baltimore County. I know there were multiple other areas. I'm just trying to see, that, we're getting into 20 years ago. Are we finally to a point where you're seeing these types of things being lifted?
Well, I think that from a tank perspective, if anything, the regulators are becoming more stringent than ever. The federal regs, you cannot be, if you're the state, you can't be less stringent than the federal regs, but you can be more stringent. So, and finding that they are being more stringent, I think the technology is all around decidedly better today than it was 20 years ago, back in 2014 years ago. So I think the combination of better technology, more stringent regulation, I think that has given people a heightened sense of confidence. We're installing, well, we don't do the installation. We're selling these tanks really anywhere in the United States. Different states have some stronger monitoring requirements, California and North Carolina, for example. But overall, I think the new technology or newer technology and the more stringent oversight by the states have addressed most people's concerns.
That's it for now.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. Council, anyone else? Mr. Johnson.
Just one question. God forbid that a tank leaks. What's the normal cleanup cost for a tank?
Reed, do you have a sense for that?
Yeah, I think I'm off mute. That's kind of a tough question to answer. It really does depend on, how much a leak. A typical, site assessment where you need to put in monitoring wells and take groundwater samples and things like that, is normally around $15,000 to $20,000, something like that. Then if you're going into where there's free floating product on the groundwater and you have to do some kind of remediation, you're talking then into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a tough question to answer because all of them run the gamut. Something could only be $5,000 if it's a little surface spill that needed to be cleaned up. Did that answer your question at all?
Yeah, it kind of does. And the last question I have is a leak, which considering a what's called a release? Is that the same thing? Leak and release? Is that the same terminology?
Yeah, so so they at Maryland and most states classify them as suspect release and then confirmed releases. So say your release detection methods was giving you a code saying that you could have a release. That would be considered a suspect release until you actually confirmed it, because sometimes there's equipment malfunctions where it could just be giving you a funky code and it's really not leaking. So when you say it leaks, then that would mean, yes, a release. But normally we talk about more of a suspect release and confirmed releases.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mr. Schroeder.
Yes, is there any data on older tanks that are out there? It would be good, I assume, if we could eventually get to the point that we're replacing these older existing tanks that may have problems, and maybe it may have been made out of steel and other materials that maybe at the end of their life cycle, how quick can we turn those over and have those fitted with these better tanks that you're speaking of?
Well, some states are so in the Northeast, several of the New England states have decided, the environmental departments, that all tanks should be replaced when they hit their warranty life, whether the tank's good or not. So 30 years, and they're actively enforcing that. So in Connecticut, for example, if your tank hits 30 years, it has to come out of the ground, double wall, single wall, working good or not. So that's a handful of states in the Northeast. Many of the large convenience store companies have their own calculus, if you will, on when to replace tanks, and the age of the tank, the material of the tank, and of course, being a commercial enterprise, the revenue that the store generates. All of that sets up a active tank replacement program where they're proactively pulling old tanks out of the ground. The bigger companies do that, and today the bulk of the business is the bigger companies. The small mom and pops are not so big. But every state is different, and every state's database is different. Some states do an excellent job. Florida, for example, of telling you what's in the ground. Florida in 2015-ish mandated all single wall tanks have to come out of the ground. So believe it or not, there are considerable number of single wall tanks still operating, pumping petroleum fuel across the United States. Well, Florida mandated they all come out, and they did. So each state is different. State legislators have a different appetite for imposing regulations like that, on their constituents, which are C-store operators, right? They're all different. As I said, most of the big companies have their own tank replacement programs. They're actively pulling tanks.
I would imagine a lot of that is potential for liability, that even if the warranty may be coming up or not there yet, that we all have kind of learned from in the past that the longer anything is, it's not as good as it was when it was younger. So it might be better just to pull them out, because, start contaminating groundwater, even if we don't have MTBEs anymore, there's something in the ground, then it could potentially travel, get in well water. Of course, that's been the concern mainly in rural areas like the areas I represent. So I'm just asking questions. I'm in no way advocating I'm going to be supporting lifting any thing that we have in a rural area, but it's more about the existing tanks in those rural areas and what we just got to keep a good eye on those. It would be nice if we got to a point that we had the double and the triple tanks as being out there.
Yeah,
It's the difference between the cost of a double and a triple. I'm sure that it's probably exponentially more money.
The triple wall's twice as much.
Right.
So we sell very few triple wall tanks. Many people would view that as overkill, but an example of where we do is in the San Antonio, Austin area, there's an aquifer called the Edwards Aquifer, which is a huge underground body of water that provides drinking water to San Antonio and Austin. And they require tertiary containment if you put a station above that aquifer. So triple wall pipe, triple wall tanks, that kind of thing. And that's really about the only place in the country where it's required. And you can imagine, because of the cost, then not many operators actually build stores above the aquifer. They build it 10 miles away from the aquifer, right?
Right. Well, thank you. Thanks for answering these questions.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. Anyone else? All right, well, look, we thank you for your time and for the information you provided us this evening. Thanks
Thanks
again.
very much. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Agenda item number 5, approval of minutes. Board of Health update. Public hearing May 12th, 2020. Legislative day 20-00, or excuse me, 016, May 12th, 2020. And public hearing for fiscal year 21 budget, May 14th, 2020. Are there any corrections to the minutes? There being no corrections, the minutes stand approved. Mr. Vice President, would you please read in MOC 1 to resolution 01420 into the record for introduction?
Thank you, Mr. President. Memorandum of change number 1 to resolution 014-20, FY 21 Capital Improvement Program. Memorandum of change number 1, introduced by Council President Vincenti at the request of the County Executive. Reference resolution 014-20 Capital Program, fiscal years 2021 through 2026. Agency Watershed Management. Project Bynum Run at St. Andrews Way Stream Restoration. Sunnyview Stream Restoration. Middle Bynum Run Watershed Restoration Improvements. This memorandum of change will correct the type of funding transferred from Bynum Run at St. Andrews Way Stream Restoration to, in brackets, $661,039 in prior bonds and, in brackets, $38,961 in prior pay-go. Consequently, this memorandum of change will also correct the type of funding on the Sunnyview Stream Restoration Project to $461,039 in prior bonds and $38,961 in prior pay-go.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Again, memorandum of change 1 to resolution 014-20 fiscal year 21 capital improvement program. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Mr. Woods,
I move to approve memorandum of change number 1.
may I have a second? Mr. Schroeds. Moved and seconded to approve memorandum of change 1 to resolution 014-20. Are there any discussions? Ms. Dixon.
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Biola.
Aye.
Being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, memorandum of change 1 to resolution 014-20 is hereby approved. Councilman Wagner, would you please read in memorandum of change 2 and 3 to resolution 014-20 into the record for introduction?
Memorandum of change number 2 references resolution 014-20 capital program fiscal years 2021 through 2026. This is under site acquisition. This memorandum of change will remove $500,000 in FY 2021 for site acquisition and reallocate it to the General Capital Project Aberdeen Activity Center. Memorandum of change number 3 is for resolution number 014-20 capital program fiscal years 2021 through 2026. Agency is Parks and Recreation. Project is Aberdeen Activity Center. This memorandum of change will move the appropriation of $500,000 for engineering and design from FY 2022 to FY 2021 for the Parks and Recreation Capital Project Aberdeen Activity Center. This change also moves the project from Parks and Recreation Capital Fund to the General Capital Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. And again, this will be considered at our next meeting. Agenda item number 7, introduction and consideration of amendments. Amendments 1 through 8 to Bill 20-006 transfer request. May I have a motion?
Mr. President.
Mr. Woods. Excuse me, Mr. Kearney. We did that last week.
Should have been in the room.
Council, just for your information, we do have Council Attorney Mr. Kearney with us this evening. So let me start over. May I have a motion?
Mr. President.
Mr. Woods.
I move to approve amendments number 1 through 8, Bill 20-006 transfer request.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. It's moved in second to approve amendments 1 through 8 to Bill 20-006. Is there any discussion? Ms. Dixon. I'm sorry.
Mr. President,
Excuse me, Ms. Dixon. Hold up. Mr. Johnson.
Yeah, Council President, for the Ag Pres amendment, I don't know if it's
The wrong,
proper.
you're in the wrong bill. We're doing transfer requests first, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Ms. Dixon.
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Mr. President.
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Jan Giordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beulah.
Aye.
Thank you. There being 7 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative, amendments 1 through 8 to Bill 20-006 are hereby approved. Amendment 1 to Bill 20-008, agriculture preservation. May I have a motion?
Council President,
Mr. Schroeds.
I make a motion to approve amendment number 1 to bill number 20-008.
Thank you, Mr. Woods, for a second. It's moved and seconded to approve Amendment 1 to Bill 20-008, Ag Preservation. Is there any discussion? Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. Just for this, I don't know if it's proper. I just would like to request a fiscal impact note for the Ag Pres.
There should be one there. There's one there, Andre. Excuse me, Mr. Johnson.
Okay, so because reading the county auditor's report, it was undetermined.
So, Mr. Johnson, we have a physical impact note here in front of us, and if you like, I'll make sure that you get it later this evening.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Any other discussion? Ms. Dixon.
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Jan Giordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner, Mr. Wagner,
Try again, sir.
Aye.
Very good. Thank
There
you.
we go.
We could see you doing it.
Mr. Beulah,
Aye.
Thank you. There are 7 votes in the affirmative and 0 in the negative. Amendment 1 to Bill 20-008 is hereby approved. Mr. Woods, would you please read in amendments 1 through 4 into the record for introduction, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendments number 1 through 4 to Bill 20-007, LoSAP enhancements, introduced by Council Vice President Woods, Council President Vincenti, and the County Executive Glassman. Amendment number 1. On the title page in the first line, strike benefits and insert benefits, section 28-3, disabilities and death benefits, section 25-5, records. Thank you. Section 28-5, records, certifications of eligibility, appeals, and section 28-6, point system. And on the same page, in the fourth line of the title page, after, in brackets, LoSAP, insert to provide for an increase in the percentage of benefits to a surviving spouse, to provide for distribution of certified lists to volunteer members, to modify the point system to qualify for benefits. Amendment number 2. On page 1, in line 2, strike benefits and insert benefits. Section 28-3, disability and death benefits. Section 28-5, records, certifications of eligibility, appeals, and section 28-6, point system. Amendment number 3. On page 2, in line 5, strike 50% and insert 75%. Amendment number 4. On page 2, after line 7, insert the following. Section 28-3, disability and death benefits. A qualified volunteer is herein defined for the purpose of this section as one who has completed 25 years of certified service. B, in the event that any active volunteer becomes disabled during the course of service described in the Annotated Code of Maryland, Labor and Employment Article, Title 9, and such disability prevents the volunteer from pursuing his normal occupation, and the disability is of a permanent nature as determined and certified by the State Workers' Compensation Commission. The volunteer is entitled to receive the benefits prescribed in Section 28-2A and any such benefits as he may be entitled to, regardless of his age or length of service. These benefits shall begin on the first day of the month following the establishment of the determination of the permanent disability and shall remain in effect as long as the permanent disability exists. This subsection shall not be applicable to any volunteer not insured either by the county or any other department, company, or workers' compensation insurance carrier. C, in the event that any volunteer shall die while receiving disability benefits, his surviving spouse is entitled to benefits equal to, in brackets, 75% of the volunteer's benefits. These benefits shall terminate upon death or remarriage of the spouse. D, in the event that a qualified volunteer dies prior to or while receiving any benefits under this section, his surviving spouse is entitled to benefits equal to, in brackets, 75% of the benefits the deceased was eligible to receive at the time of death. These benefits shall commence upon the first day of the first month after the death of the volunteer and shall terminate upon the death or remarriage of his spouse. E, in the event that any volunteer dies as a result of performing the services described in the Annotated Code of Maryland, Labor and Employment Article, Title 9, his spouse shall be entitled to benefits under Section 28-2A or B, whichever are the greater. These benefits shall commence on the first day of the first month after the death and shall terminate upon death or remarriage of the spouse. F, in the event that a qualified volunteer fireman dies, a burial benefit of $5,000 shall be paid to the spouse beneficiary or the estate of the volunteer. Claims for death benefits shall be documented by a death certificate and or such other evidence as required. Section 28-5, records, certification of eligibility, appeals. A, it is the responsibility of each participating volunteer fire department, company, or ambulance corps to maintain detailed and accurate records for each volunteer member on forms prescribed by the Department of the Treasury. B, by October 1st of each year, a designee of each volunteer fire department, company, or ambulance corps shall furnish the Department of the Treasury with a statement of all volunteers of the department or corps who have qualified for credit for the previous years. Each statement shall contain all members, ages, previous credits earned, and other information as may be required by the association and the Department of the Treasury of the county. C, upon receipt of this statement, the Department of the Treasury shall review the list of each department or corps. The Department of the Treasury shall submit a final statement from each department or corps to the association. After the association approves the certified list, it shall forward a copy of each approved list to the fire department, company, or ambulance corps concerned by November 1st of each year. The list shall be certified for accuracy by the department, company, or corps and shall be sent electronically to the volunteer members and be posted in conspicuous place within each fire department, company, or ambulance corps building for a period of not less than 30 calendar days. The posting date and the date of expiration of the 30 calendar days for a right of appeal shall be noted on all approved lists. D, a person whose name does not appear on the certified list or who is denied credit for service has the right of appeal within 30 calendar days of the posting. E, the request for an appeal hearing shall be in writing and addressed to the association, which shall make a final decision. The hearing shall be conducted by the association within 15 calendar days after the posting expires, but not less than 5 calendar days after notifying the appellant of the date. The association shall immediately notify the Department of the Treasury in writing of the outcome of the hearing. F, shall be the responsibility of the association to submit a statement under oath of any benefits to be paid under Section 28-3B, including prompt notification of termination. Section 28-6, point system. In order to qualify for the benefits pursuant to this article, points shall be credited to each volunteer in accordance with the following standards. A, if a volunteer member must be a minimum of 16 years of age to be enrolled in the length of service award program. In brackets A, B, 1 point shall be credited for every 3 hours of attendance in a recognized training course, provided that not more than 25 points may be credited for all training courses attended per year. In brackets B, C, 1 point shall be credited for each, in brackets, company or county drill, county drill, or training attended in its entirety, provided that not more than 20 points may be credited for all drills attended per year. Brackets C, D, 1 point shall be credited for each official company or county meeting pertaining to the county fire services or rescue services attended, provided that not more than 25% may be credited for all, 25 points may be credited for all meetings attended per year. Brackets D, E, 1 point shall be credited for each call to which a volunteer responds, provided that not more than 40 points may be credited for all calls responded to per year. Brackets E, F, no more than, in brackets 25 points shall be credited for completion of a 1-year term as an appointed or elected officer or committee chair in any of the fire or rescue services organizations of the county, provided that not more than 1 office shall be counted in any calendar year, in brackets year, with 2 points being credited monthly for the first 11 months and 3 points being credited for the completion of the 12th month. Brackets F, G, 1 point shall be credited for every 3 hours of acceptable collateral duties such as, but not limited to, apparatus and building maintenance, official standby, and fire prevention or fundraising details, provided that not more than 25, in brackets 25, 40 points may be credited for all collateral duties performed per year. G, in brackets, H, a volunteer member who served or has served full-time military service in the armed forces of the United States shall receive credit at the rate of 5 points for each month served, provided that not more than 50 points can be credited for the calendar year. A maximum of 4 years of credible service may be acquired in this manner.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. C, amendments to Bill 20-007, LoSAP enhancements. May I have a motion?
Mr. President.
Mr. Woods.
Mr. President, I move to approve amendments 1 through 4
Thank you.
to Bill 20-007.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Moved and seconded to approve amendments to Bill 20-007, LoSAP enhancements. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President.
Mr. Woods.
Mr. President, thank you. There's a ton of work that went into this, obviously. There's a lot to it, but really only a few changes took place. First part, this goes along with the county executive's changes and enhancements to the LoSAP system that basically gave the members a raise. Amendment number 1 provides for an increase of the percentage of the death benefits going to the surviving spouse. This is something that the volunteers have been asking for a long time, taking those changes from 50 points to, 50% to 75% of the surviving spouse's benefits of what they would receive. The section amendment 2 and 3 follows up with that. It actually says what the benefits would be, who's eligible, and where that's coming from. Section 4, there's a lot to read, but only a couple of things actually changed. It's where we actually said the 75% from the 50. Talks a little bit about the records and some of the clarification. One of the things that came up that's happening right now is members who are not allowed up to the firehouse cannot see what their current LoSAP is. So this gives us the ability to send out the LoSAP information electronically to their members, which is very helpful and something also that companies have asked for quite some time now. Volunteer members must meet a minimum age of 16. Most fire companies in the county do allow a 16-year-old to join. I joined at 16, and actually I didn't start receiving LoSAP until I was 17 or 18. Some other companies, and Falston also does now, if you're at 16, you start making LoSAP points, you should be and you are eligible by state law to receive those points. So we're just making sure it spells it out in law that a 16-year-old can be enrolled into the program, and we'll start getting the benefits. Over the years, there's been questions about what is training in the county. So this clarifies that any type of drill training or company drill, any type of training is now listed in here. Before it was just a company or county drill. So now we just want to make sure that we have a little bit more flexibility in the wording to say training, and it still keeps it at the 20 points. No more than 25 points shall be credited. Okay, over the years, there's also been questions about what is a appointed or elected officer, and does a committee chair member count for that? Most companies have agreed that a committee chair member should receive the point as an officer or an elected official inside the fire department. This clarifies that, allowing the committee chair to receive up to 25 points a year. The next problem this takes care of is currently, if I'm on a committee that only lasts a certain amount of year, so for a couple months out of the year, so maybe like the elections board or elections committee. Elections committee might only function in some companies for 2 or 3 months. Well, that committee chair by law should be eligible to get 25 points, but if that committee only lasts for 3 months, then they're not eligible for their points. So what this does is gives them a point for every month of service, and then if they complete 12 months, they'll get the extra point to equal 25. The biggest one out of this, which I think is going to be probably one of the most helpful right now, is because there's a lot of questions through all the departments dealing with COVID. A lot of administrative members are not allowed at their firehouses and are not able to continue to get their points. So there might be a deficit of members that that have points at the end of the year and won't qualify for LoSAP. Right now, administrative members can only get up to 25 points. Now you're supposed to get two categories to equal your LoSAP. So if you're maxed out at 25 and then the rest of your points as an administrative member come from drills or meetings or something of that nature, you might not make your LoSAP this year. What this does is it changes it to 40 points, which allows an administrative member to get more credit for the administrative time that they're spending cleaning the firehouse, doing stuffing envelopes, helping out with fundraisers, or just generally helping with the fire service or fire department. There are some companies that do not allow for their administrative members to get response credits or standby credits. So this also fills that gap and takes care of those members that might be slipping through the cracks. And I strongly feel that that will take care of, because we have plenty of time left in this LoSAP year, that will allow for members that are short on points to get collateral points to make it up, so they're not going to be short on achieving their LoSAP this year. And finally, all the way at the beginning, we talked a little bit about with the county exec, even though this is in there, the county exec's increase, that there's always been questions about what happens when members are the older members and what happens for their length of service. I strongly feel that the county executives change to the LoSAP bill and giving them a raise is going to help retention on the older members, the ones that have been here longer. And I think it's going to help with that cap issue that we often hear about that we can't find. So once again, I want to thank everyone who's been involved with helping with this, all the council members for their advice, Jessica, legislative aide, who's been phenomenal with working on this, Falston's LoSAP coordinator, and of course Dave Williams for giving a lot of information, and all the members of the association, and of course our council attorney Charlie Kearney, because at the last minute, even about 10 minutes before the meeting started, he made a correction for me. So thanks for everyone involved.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Mr. Schroeder.
Thank you, Council President. First, I just want to thank you, Joe, for your volunteerism in the fire service, starting at such a young age. But when it comes to matters like this, our very essential volunteer fire and EMS providers, that you're a true asset having that background and bringing that to us on the council. So I know you've worked incredibly hard on your amendments, and I thank you for that. I'm positive that our dedicated volunteers are going to be very pleased. I also, of course, want to thank our county executive, Barry Glassman, and his entire team for bringing this forward, especially during this very unprecedented time as we are making our way through this historic pandemic. We're really realizing how important and essential those frontline workers are. I mean, I believe we always have on the council, but this really has kind of shined a spotlight on them during this challenging time. So thank you, and thank the Glassman administration.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeder. Mr. Wagner.
Mr. Kearney is still with us, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is it too late to ask for a friendly amendment that runs through this? And I'll tell you why. I'm just looking at this and sort of, I guess, wordsmithing. Throughout the whole, all the amendments, it references his. I would prefer it, as our volunteer fire service has changed over the years, if it said his/her, or where it says his, it would say her, he and she. I mean, it just references male throughout the whole all the amendments. That's why I was just thinking maybe as a friendly amendment, if we could change that for after we approve it, or no.
Council.
Mr. Wagner, interesting enough, when Jessica and I started writing this, Ms. Blake and I, we actually had all that in there initially. So So hopefully Charlie can explain it. We're getting him a microphone. Good thing I added the extra cord on that today.
Councilman Wagner, the amendments to any bill have to be in writing and before the council. You can have friendly amendments to oral motions that may be made, but not an amendment to the bill of a friendly nature.
All right. Well, at this late date, if you want to move ahead, then I just note the fact that I would prefer this to reference gender as it just as the way it reads. What happened to it? If I can ask Mr. Woods, why did it change back to just the male version? Do you know?
I'm not really sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Mr. Woods, how do you want to handle that?
Do we need to move on it now? I mean,
It sounds to me if we have to do an amendment, as Mr. Wagner's suggesting, we may have to table this
next week,
or move on these and table the bill the next week. Am I right?
No.
Unless we did a whole bill rewrite.
So based.
Regardless, if we table it, then we would have to go back and reread all of this, which is fine, but.
We can adopt this and just replace the words to these amendments rather than so you don't have to read it all.
Yeah, it's probably, I believe Charlie, the attorney is correct. It's probably better to move on it now than move on it now.
Did you follow that, Mr. Wagner?
I did, and I guess as I'm looking at probably Bill 20-007 reflects this kind of language throughout, correct?
I think that's part of the reason why it didn't change, because there were other sections that we weren't bringing up. And it would have taken it in.
Yeah, that's what I'm guessing. That's probably true. So if we do something, we'll do it at a later date. Just go ahead and move on it this evening.
Again, anyone else? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
He's trying.
You need to unmute your mic, sir. There you go.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye. Is it not working? Aye.
It is now, yes.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beulah.
Aye.
Thank you. There being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, amendments 1 through 4 to Bill 20-007 are hereby approved. Mr. Woods, would you please read in amendments 1 through 3 to Bill 20-009?
Thank you, Mr. President. Amendments number 1 through 3 to Bill 20-009, Annual Budget Appropriation Ordinance. Introduced by Council President Vincini at the request of the County Executive. Amendment number 1. On page 38 in line 5, strike $15,235,000 and substitute $15,355,000. Amendment number 2. On page 38 in line 4, strike $2,900,000 and substitute $2,940,000. Amendment number 3. On page 38 between lines 17 and 18, insert the following: Chestnut Hill Road Bridge number 40, $160,000.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Mr. Boniface? Good evening,
Yes.
sir.
Mr. President.
You want to speak to these amendments?
Yes, thank you, sir. What we did is we increased the future bonds to 120,000, and we increased the federal contribution to 40. So it just reflects those changes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Mr. Woods, would you please read in amendments 4 through 72
Thank you, Mr. President.
to Bill 20-009?
Amendments 4 through 72, Bill 20-009, Annual Budget Appropriation Ordinance, introduced by Council President of the City at the request of the County Executive. Amendment number 4. On page 36, between lines 24 and 25, insert the following: North Harford HS Aquaculture Lab and Greenhouse, 37,701. Oh, it is. Thank you. In parentheses, 37,701. Amendment number 5. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following: prior pay-go, in parentheses, 37,701. Amendment number 6. On page 36, between lines 26 and 27, insert the following: roof replacement, North Harford Elementary School, in parentheses, 50,658. Amendment number 7. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following: prior bonds, in parentheses, 50,658. Amendment number 8. On page 36, between lines 24 and 25, insert the following: roof replacement, Aberdeen Middle School, in parentheses, 119,722. Amendment number 9. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following: prior bonds, 119,722, in parentheses. Amendment number 10. On page 36, between line 16 and 17, insert the following: Darlington Elementary School Comprehensive HVAC Systematic Project, in parentheses, 105,812. Amendment number 11. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following: prior bonds, in parentheses, 105,812. Amendment number 12. On page 36, between lines 24 and 25, insert the following: Riverside ES HVAC Systematic Renovation, in parentheses, 44,731. Amendment number 13. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following: prior bonds, in parentheses, 44,731. Amendment number 14. On page 36, between lines 17 and 18, insert the following: Falston chiller replacement, in parentheses, 74,094. Amendment number 15. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following: prior bonds, in parentheses, 74,094. Amendment number 16. On page 36, between lines 24 and 25, insert the following: North Harford Middle School domestic water improvements, in parentheses, 520,777. Amendment number 17. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following: prior bonds, in parentheses, 520,777. Amendment number 18. On page 36, between lines 19 and 20, insert the following: HCPS Facilities Repair Program, 400,000. Amendment number 19. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following: prior bonds, 400,000. On page 36, between lines 24 and 25, insert the following: major HVAC, 303,495. Amendment number 21. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following: prior bonds, 303,495. Amendment number 22. On page 36, between the lines 16 and 17, insert the following: athletic and recreation repairs and improvements, 250,000. Amendment number 23. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go, 37,701. Amendment number 24. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following. Prior bonds, 212,299. Amendment number 25. On page 36, between line 26 and 27, insert the following. Technologically educational lab refresh. In parentheses, 23,352. Amendment number 26. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go. In parentheses, 23,352. Amendment number 27. On page 36, between lines 26 and 27, insert the following. Special education facility improvements. In parentheses, 398,264. Amendment number 28. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go. In parentheses, 398,264. Amendment number 29. On page 36, between lines 24 and 25, insert the following. Music equipment refresh, 2,476. In parentheses, thank you. Amendment number 30. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go. In parentheses, 2,476. Amendment number 31. On page 36, after line 27, insert the following. Textbooks, supplemental materials refresh. In parentheses, 390,579. Amendment number 32. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go. In parentheses, 390,579. Amendment number 33. On page 36 in line 17, strike 1,131,000 and substitute 1,945,671. Amendment number 34. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go. 814,671. Amendment number 35. On page 36, after line 27, insert the following. Technological infrastructure, 15. In parentheses, 409,986. Amendment number 36. On page 34, between line 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go. In parentheses, 409,986. Amendment number 47 on page. I was hoping for 47. Amendment number 37. On page 36, between line 19 and 20, insert the following. Integrated business systems, in parentheses, 10,874. Amendment number 38. On page 34 and line 15, strike 9,500,000 and substitute 9,489,126. Amendment number 39. On page 36 and line 27, strike 1 million and substitute 860. 1,420,860. Amendment number 40. On page 34, between lines 7 and 10, insert the following. Okay, amendment number 40. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go, 409,986. Amendment number 41. On page 34 in line 15, strike 9,500,000 and substitute 9,510,874. Amendment number 42. On page 36, between lines 17 and 18, insert the following. Fire alarm and ER communications. In parentheses, $33,419. Amendment number 43. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go. In parentheses, 9,224. Amendment number 44. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following. Prior bonds, in parentheses, 24,190. 24,195. Amendment number 45. On page 36, between lines 17 and 18, insert the following. Energy efficient initiatives projects. In parentheses, 114,316. Amendment number 46. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go. In parentheses, 114,316. Amendment number 47. On page 36, between lines 16 and 17, insert the following. Backflow prevention. Parentheses, 10,491. Am I supposed to stop there or?
Yep, I'll just keep right on rolling. Unless you want to take a break.
Nope. Which one was that? It was 47. All right. Amendment number 48. On page 34, in line 15, strike 9,500,000 and substitute 9,489,509. Amendment number 49. On page 36, in line 24, strike 530,000 and substitute 688,226. Amendment number 50. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following. Prior bonds, 24,195. Amendment number 51. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go, 123,540. Amendment number 52. On page 34, in line 15, strike 9,500,000 and substitute 9,510,491. Amendment number 53. On page 36, between lines 24 and 25, insert the following. Replacement buses, in parentheses, 16,159. Amendment number 54. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following. Prior bonds, in parentheses, 16,159. Amendment number 55. On page 36, in line 18, strike 1,542,000 and substitute 1,558,159. Amendment number 56. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following. Prior bonds, 60,159. Amendment number 57. On page 36, between lines 16 and 17, insert the following. Athletic fields, repair and restoration. In parentheses, 61,781. Amendment number 58. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go. In parentheses, 61,781. Amendment number 59. On page 36, between lines 26 and 27, insert the following. Swimming pool restorations. Oh, looks like restorations to me. Swimming pool renovations. Thank you. In parentheses, 162,156. Amendment number 60. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go. In parentheses, 162,156. Amendment number 61. On page 36, between lines 16 and 17, insert the following. Athletic and recreational repairs and improvements, 223,937. Amendment number 62. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay go. $223,937. Amendment number 63. On page 36, between lines 24 and 25, insert the following. Major HVAC repairs, parentheses, $1,021,495. Amendment number 64. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following. Prior bonds, in parentheses, $1,021,495. Amendment number 65. On page 36, between lines 24 and 25, insert the following. Major HVAC, $1,021,495. Amendment number 66. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following. Prior bonds, $1,021,495. Amendment number 65. On page 36, between lines 16 and 17, insert the following. ADA improvements, in parentheses, $37,185. What did I say? Close enough. It's amendment number 67. That was for ADA improvements.
Yes.
All right. Amendment number 68. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay-go, parentheses, $19,517. Amendment number 69. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following. Prior bonds, in parentheses, $17,668. Amendments number 70. Amendment number 70. On page 36, between lines 19 and 20, insert the following. HCPS Facilities Repair Program, $37,185. Amendment number 71. On page 34, between lines 9 and 10, insert the following. Prior pay-go, $19,517. Amendment number 72. On page 34, between lines 11 and 12, insert the following. Prior bond, $17,668.
Thank you, Mr. Woods.
See, anything better if Charlie wasn't in the room.
He intimidated you. At this time, Ms. Judd, Mr. Clark, are you available to speak?
Hi, how are you?
Just fine. How are you?
Good, thanks. So I'm going to walk through blocks of the amendments. Kim Spence gave me a summary of how they're presented to all of you. So do you want me to stop after each one so you can ask?
Enter the event panelist numeric password.
The only thing I saw thus far was from the county auditor, and in her fiscal notes, it said that it was undetermined at this time. That's why I'm requesting it.
Okay, so it sounds like I have a copy of it. I'll make sure that you get it tonight.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes. Any other discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Jan Giordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beulah.
Aye.
There being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, Bill 20-008 as amended is hereby approved. Agenda item number 9, enrollment of bills. The enrolled copies of bills 20-006, transfer request as amended. Bill 20-007, LoSAP enhancements as amended. Bill 20-008, agricultural preservation as amended, is certified as being the text finally passed. Agenda item number 10, new business, Harford County Public Schools, fiscal year 20 intercategory operating budget transfers. Again, Ms. Judd, Mr. Clark, Mr. Brown, Mr. Morton.
Thank you.
You guys would like to speak to that?
Yes, I will start off and then I will turn it over to Mr. Clark, who will explain the details. Each year we come before you right around this time of year to true up our state categories. We cannot by law overspend in any of those categories. So after our third quarter financials are complete, we do an estimate and projection of our expenditures through June 30 and determine what those transfers need to be. So we brought these to our board last night for their approval, which they did approve, and we're presenting to you all this evening. I will ask Mr. Clark to go ahead and explain the details of the transfer, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you.
Good evening, President Vincenti and council members. We're projecting through June 30, we're going to be a little bit over original budgeted in fixed charges, other instructional costs, textbooks and supplies, and psychological services. The final one there on the first sheet is Office of Accountability. They have asked for a small amount of $18,000 to be transferred from their supplies and materials account to their other instructional costs testing account. The sheet that's shown on your screen that has the different colors starting with the green shaded, what we are looking at doing is those first 11 lines are salary lines where we're projecting a variance. We're requesting to move those funds into the first shaded category that says 112 fixed charges health insurance. A total to $3.7 million. The blue shaded are also salary line items, and we're asking for those funds to be moved into other instructional costs, instructional equipment, textbooks and supplies, textbooks, and then psychological services consultants. And then the last shaded, which is kind of the gold shading, that is the request from the Office of Accountability to move $18,000 from their textbooks and supplies testing account into the other instructional costs testing account. We would certainly be happy to answer any questions that you have at this time.
Thank you, sir. Council members, any questions? All right, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Clark, for that explanation. Council, may I have a motion?
Mr. President.
Mr. Woods.
I move to approve the FY20 intercategory operating budget transfer Harford County Public Schools.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Schroeds. Moved and seconded to approve the fiscal 20 intercategory operating budget transfers. Is there any discussion? Mr. Wagner.
Can I ask when, and I should have asked this earlier, I just couldn't get to unmute my mic fast enough. Can I ask when these numbers were formulated? Were they formulated before the 8-9 weeks that children have been out of school? Or are they taking into account the fact that they have not been there? Just figure out that I would have assumed that there would have been a difference in a variation of the budgeted amounts in the other way because of the students not being in school.
Yes, that's correct. So these numbers were calculated after March 31st. So the students were out of school at that time, and we really finalized them within the last week, really. So we've spent a lot of time looking at all of our budget line items to see where surpluses would exist versus where we had overages. So in salaries, we have surpluses due to regular vacancies. We have surpluses due to the fact that we will not have substitutes for the remainder of the year. That was a significant surplus. Utilities is a surplus. You know, we've looked at all of those line items and determined what we needed to buy or could buy for the end of the year. So all of that is considered in our third quarter financial projections. And the resulting category transfers this evening are where we end up after all of that is taken into account.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Anyone else? Ms. Dixon?
Mr. President,
Aye.
Mr. Johnson,
Aye.
Mr. Woods,
Aye.
Mr. Giangiordano,
Aye.
Mr. Schroeds,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Beulah.
Aye.
Being 7 votes in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, the fiscal year 20 intercategory operating budget transfer is hereby approved. If I may, Mr. Kearney, do you have that email that we can forward on to Mr. Johnson?
Email that I came across.
Council President?
Ms. Lambert?
Yes, thank you. We did provide a fiscal note on the parking lot zoning change, which has an upcoming public hearing in the next few weeks. However, with regard to the ag pres bill, that is not a topic that involves a change in zoning. So because of that, it is not subject to a fiscal note. So that is why you don't have one for this bill. But again, you do have one for the upcoming bill in a few weeks having to do with the change in zoning for parking.
All right, thank you, Ms. Lambert.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have that, yes. Okay. Mr. Johnson, we'll talk offline after the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Moving on, agenda number 11, business from the president. I would just say that first off, I want to give a huge shout out to my Rotary brother, Derek DeWitt, and the Boys and Girls Clubs of Harford and Cecil. They're going to be featured on Good Morning America tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. They're going to be talking about the child care services that they're providing for our essential workers that need it. So again, kudos to them. It's a fantastic program that we have in both our counties and extremely well supported. The other thing I'd like to comment on is last night we participated in a virtual town hall with Reopen Harford County, Sheriff Gaylord, County Executive Glassman, State's Attorney Peisener, and myself. It was just about an hour long, a lot of good, clear questions about possibilities and trying to clarify some of the things that people are asking questions about. But was glad I did it. I thought they did an outstanding job. Also, my colleagues and I, we continue to advocate for small business in Harford County. We are taking calls on a daily basis for sure, relaying information back and forth from the governor's office and the health department and the administration as well. So just want to make sure everyone knows that we are absolutely involved in the process. And with that, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, President. I don't have anything tonight. I'll yield my time back.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Woods.
Thank you, Mr. President. This week starts EMS week, so it's the week that we acknowledge our EMS providers throughout the state and the country. Normally, you would go to the hospitals and find food waiting for EMS providers. I don't think they're doing that much of that right now, but once all this gets back to normal, we'll have to do a modified EMS week to celebrate that. And also, I want to thank our District B Citizen Budget Advisor, Dave Williams. He's been doing this since I started on the council, so very thankful to have him. And of course, his help with the LoSAP. He helped with that back when he first became fire chief, I guess 2-3 years ago or so now. So thanks for his help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woods. Mr. Giangiordano.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to let everybody be aware, any small businesses that Harford County has posted online for COVID-19 small business relief grants. Small businesses with 2 to 50 employees can apply for 7,500 grants towards social distancing expenses, PPE purchases, payroll, and other operating costs. Farmers with 10 plus acres can apply for $2,500 of these grants. And they start taking the applications Tuesday, May 26th. And that's all I have. Thank you, Ms. Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for hanging in there this evening.
I'm in a lot of pain. Thank you very much.
I can see it. Mr. Schroeds.
Thank you, Council President. I just want to commend our entire North Harford community for coming together over the weekend on Saturday, and especially the farmers who allowed us to use their properties and farm equipment and wagons to help to recognize and pay tribute to our North Harford High School graduates. Of course, this has been a year like no other for everyone, and anyone graduating, it's not like it has been. So this was a way for our community to honor them, and basically what it is, it's a stretch of highway from Jarrettsville all the way to Whiteford up 165, a 12-mile stretch where you'll see numerous, probably 30 pieces of farm equipment with banners of each of the graduates, as well as other homemade style banners congratulating them. But this could not have been done without the farmers of our community. It could not have been done without all the volunteers that we had working on all of this. And it could not have been done without two individuals' help, and that is Hannah Smith, a graduate who compiled all of the photographs with the names and prepared that to the sign company, and then also Michelle Hall. But really, it was everyone. Businesses sponsored over $3,000 worth of signage and other materials to pull this off. We could not have done it without them and anyone along that corridor. So I encourage you to go up and pay a visit and check that out. I think it's really, really cool. This Friday, May 22nd, in honor of Memorial Day, McComas Celebration of Life Center in Jarrettsville will be offering free lunches catered by Cowboy Eats to veterans from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. in appreciation for their service. A $5 donation from non-veterans will benefit the Jarrettsville Manor Memorial Post 8672. I would also like to express my deepest condolences to the family of George Harkins, who passed away on May 13th. As many of you know, he spent a lifetime of supporting agriculture, especially the 4-H, the Farm Fair, and FFA. So please keep his family in your thoughts and prayers. And lastly, I would like to wish my amazing wife, Amber, a very happy birthday today. That's all I have tonight. Be safe.
Well done, Mr. Schroeds. Mr. Wagner.
I just want to offer a debt of gratitude to John Scotton, who was my budget advisory person last year and this year too. He spent countless hours going over the budget, as he well knows it, spending years there as the former county treasurer. And we went through and talked about a lot of things, and I appreciate all his dedication and time that was spent this past season on this, and look forward to him serving in the future. And with that, I'll give my time back.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Mr. Beulah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Nothing tonight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. So agenda number 13, comments and input from attending citizens. Do we have anyone signed up? I guess we do.
Malamo.
Good evening, sir. It's Council President Vincenti. May I have your name and address for the record?
Good evening, sir. John P. Malamo, 2402 Eagleview Drive. Continuing on, from the site plan approval letter we see, proposed septic reserve for future use is located on an adjoining property. Condition 6 of the zoning case 5814 required consolidation of all parcels comprising the airport. The final plat was required to be recorded prior to building permit application. The site plan cannot reflect the final plat if the future septic reserve area is shown on another property. Next, we see there are several commercial tenants such as Skydive Baltimore and a drone research facility. Skydiving and drone research are not principal uses, they are accessory uses. These particular accessory uses were not recognized in the condition of the special exception or the zoning code. When they are not permitted, they would then be prohibited. Their addition and operation would be an extension of the airport operation and require a variance by the Zoning Board of Appeals. That would be in your purview. The skydiving operation is best described as an amusement. It is also a commercial operation, a business. Amusements are not permitted in the AG district. The skydive operation was never authorized by the Zoning Board of Appeals when it first began operation, while the Harford County Airport was operating as a non-conforming use. The special exception granted in zoning case 5814 did not authorize a skydiving operation. Neither was a variance issued for this business. The Great Wall of China was built to separate China from the outside world. Viewed from a satellite at an altitude high above the Earth's surface, the image of the Great Wall of China appears as a line. Descending to successively lower elevations, the line becomes less visible until it is lost from sight altogether. There is also a line between incompetence and corruption. When viewed at an elevation of sufficient height, the line is clearly visible. Descending to successively lower heights, the line is less visible until it too is lost from sight. The difference between the two lines is that the Great Wall of China remains as a physical barrier between China and the outside world. I'll leave you with this question. At what low level is visibility of either line lost? Good night.
Good night, sir. Is there anyone else, Ms. Dixon?
There's no one else, Mr. President.
With no one else, then this meeting will be adjourned. Good night.
This meeting is no longer being recorded.